Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Pride Has Spoken. I'm Matt Scott, one of your hosts of The Pride Has Spoken. My pronouns are he, him. I am not alone. I am joined by the one and only Grace Leeder. Grace.
Hi, my name is Grace Leeder. My pronouns are she, her. I'm so excited to be here, but of course, we're not alone. It's 3 to tango, I believe, is how the phrase works. So, Dr. Evvie Jagoda is here too. Hi, Evvie.
What's going on? This is Evvie Jagoda. I use they, them pronouns, and I am so excited for this episode of The Pride Has Spoken because we have the one, the only Teeny from Survivor 47 breaking the internet with how hot and cool and trans he is. And it's just so exciting. And I can't wait to talk to them.
Really is. Really broke the internet. Really.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, this is thrilling. And I feel like each year with The Pride Has Spoken, we're like, who are the queer people we'll have on? What are we going to do? And then Teeny graced our screens on Survivor 47, similar to Asia. And but so many, like, such different stories. And I think it's so powerful that we could have this conversation with Teeny, or really you two could have this conversation with Teeny behind the scenes.
You'll be here in spirit. You'll be here in spirit.
I am here. I am there in spirit in the conversation.
Actually, Matt was there the whole time. He just never spoke, which I thought was rude.
Yeah, I was just in awe in all three of you the whole time. I'm starstruck, actually, but you know, it happens. But here's the thing: you could check out the podcast. There's the audio version, of course, the video version. Check that out on RHAP's YouTube. And what else do we want to plug before we get into this conversation with Teeny?
RHAP or robinsawebsite.com/store, I believe. Is that right? Yes is the place where you can go to get the Pride Has Spoken t-shirt or other merchandise that is available. There might still be some buffs left, TBD. All the proceeds for those will go to a charity. We're still determining which one. We should hopefully have an announcement about that soon. I'm still working away at our RHAP, the Pride Has Spoken charity raffle that we'll do as well. And literally, but you know, in the week there's more people who have agreed to do things, so I'm very excited to announce once we have more news about that. Should be probably by next week.
Yeah. And please, if you want to talk about the show, tag us on Instagram and Twitter and Blue Sky and whatever you're on with the hashtag The Pride Has Spoken. That's the hashtag you should use if you want to write something nice, and if you want to write something mean, don't do that.
Get out.
Yeah, that's right.
Is there anything else we need to say? Are we passing it off?
Yeah, I think we should go to the interview.
Let's get to it.
Okay, Evvie, you and I are back before we actually get to the interview because I do have exciting news about many different things related to the Pride Has Spoken.
Let's go. I can't wait.
Let's go. Okay, the first thing is that we have a bunch of new merch options. Not just t-shirts, but we have a plethora of things that you can buy that has the Pride Has Spoken logo on it.
There's an extremely cool bucket hat in the store. And I just want to say, as we all know, bucket hats are back. And it's really cool. And there's also a dad hat I saw. So whichever kind of hat.
There's multiple hats. There's a hoodie. There's a mug. And I believe a bag you can get as well. And then my favorite is that if you, want to, maybe you already have it, you have some or whatever, but you just would like to donate, there are these stickers you could buy. So first of all, cool that there are stickers, but they also are designed in a way that you can sort of like give a donation for the Trevor Project, who we're supporting. That was the next piece of news I was going to share, is that we're donating to the Trevor Project this year. But you can buy stickers, I believe, at 10, 25, 50, I believe, are the options. You can buy stickers, and you'll just get the stickers, but you'll be donating to the cause. So that's very exciting. And we're donating to the Trevor Project, Evvie.
Yes. And I know we talked about this on the first one as well, but the Trevor Project is an extremely important organization that supports queer folks in mental health crises and who need support. And it's just like, I can say for myself, as someone who's like an adult who has the healthcare that I need, is in an extremely queer friendly place. This has been one of the most turbulent mental health times for me this year. Like, it's really scary to be trans in America right now. And queer people need all the support they can get, and the Trevor Project literally is a lifeline for people. And so it means a lot to us that we're able to support this organization, and it means a lot to us if you buy a hat, buy a sticker, buy a sweatshirt, buy a hoodie. We love to see you at the events and with all your swag, and also to know that every dollar that you buy towards that going to the Trevor Project just like is life-saving. Life-saving.
Okay, a couple other things. If getting new merchandise was not incentive enough to do that, we also have planned a special auction this year. I guess it's a raffle. It is technically a raffle.
The Survivor auction is back. Okay,
that's
no, it's
right.
Not. It's a raffle.
The Survivor Gay Raffle is back. Okay, and what this means is if you buy any Pride is Spoken merch, anything, a shirt, a hoodie, a sticker, whatever you buy, each individual thing you buy, you'll be entered into a raffle. You're going to get a link to a form that is going to allow you to check off things that you want to be entered into the raffle for. I know it's a little confusing, but this is the easiest way we could do it. And we have very cool items, including Zoom calls. We're going to have one with you, Matt Scott, and myself, and a lovely listener who will be able to join. And also, I believe the confirmed lineup so far is Franny, Bryce, and Todd. You could win Zoom calls with any of those people, and I'm sure we'll have more people that will confirm their availability to Zoom call. There were some people who we were wanting, and then they were like, I'm actually going to go. I'm going to Fiji to play in Survivor 50. And,
right.
That's okay.
Right.
It happens,
But like literally Franny, Bryce, and did you say Todd? Those are like three of the best people on earth.
I know.
That's really exciting and cool.
Yeah. You could win a Zoom call with them. If you buy a Pride is Spoken merch, you'll get make sure that you check your email for the link. We'll send it out like later in the month just to make sure we're getting everybody who buys an item. And you only have to buy an item in June. You have to buy it in June, and then all the proceeds go to the Pride is Spoken. So very, very exciting, I think. You also you said that those are the three coolest people. The other three cool people are Matt Scott, you, and me. Yeah, we're gonna be on a Zoom call as well.
You'll basically get to be in your own personal episode of the Pride is Spoken.
That's true.
Pretty cool.
That's true.
And I think you said, Grace, also that so first of all, to clarify, if you buy something in the Pride is Spoken store, you not only get the thing, but you got to donate money to an amazing organization, the Trevor Project. So you got to save people's lives. So you got a hat and you got to save someone's life.
You get like three things. Yeah.
And if you want, you get entered into this raffle to win one of these Zoom calls. And I think you said, Grace, to me before this, that you'll get a form so you can say which of those people, if any, you actually want to be in the raffle. So if you don't want to, if that sounds awkward to you, you totally don't have to do it.
That's right.
It's a special, awesome thing because we just really want people to spend as much money as you can in the store. Really, this is such an important cause.
Yes, you'll get it'll be the same email that you use to purchase your items. You'll get an email with the form. You fill it out, enter it into anything you would like, and then we'll do the draw towards the end of probably in July, so that because if people buy it in June. So very, very exciting. And then the last bit of news I have is I'm so appreciative of this RHAP patron named Alyssa who reached out and said she wants to do something for both RHAP and also was thinking about the Pride is Spoken and works for an organization that is going to double the donation of any donation that gets made. So Alyssa is making it possible that we are going to double the donation of everything we donate to the Trevor Project this year. So I feel like we've like supersized the fundraising efforts in the most exciting way possible, and it is possible all because of first of all everyone who purchases something from the store, these lovely Survivor contestants who are offering up Zoom calls and other things, and then this lovely listener Alyssa who reached out to offer to help double the donation.
Thank you, Alyssa. That is so cool. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
We might just have to like automatically give Alyssa a free Zoom call with.
I think that sounds right. The three of us.
Probably the three of us. Yeah,
that sounds great.
Okay, so those are all the things we wanted to say before we get to the interview. Now we're gonna send it over to this lovely interview that we do with Evvie. So
with Teeny.
See, I keep mixing you up. You'll see it. I do it one time in there. That's
but I'm there too.
You are there. Okay. You are there. Okay, we'll send it over there.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited, honored, thrilled, ecstatic to welcome to the Pride is Spoken, the one, the only Teeny from Survivor 47. Teeny, I'm so glad you're here.
I couldn't be more. You are not more excited than me, I promise you. I have been very much so looking forward to this conversation. I am honored to be talking to you, Evvie, who I watched on my screen, who I got a cameo from when I graduated college.
Oh my God.
That is amazing.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you so much for being here. And it's like so special for me and Grace to get to talk to you, Teeny. Like, I mean, there have been only a very small number of trans and other gender queer people on Survivor. And so it's really so exciting for us to get to have this conversation as 3 trans people. That's
Hell yeah.
cool. Wow.
Taking over the network.
Taking
That's
over
it.
the network.
Yeah.
Before we dive in, quick pronouns check. Teeny, last time we talked, you told me he and they are both feeling good. Is that still accurate? Okay, great.
That's awesome.
Okay, great. So everyone you're listening, you got that? Okay, great. So Teeny, how are you?
I'm doing so good. I moved to a new apartment almost 3 months ago at this point. I'm really close to the beach. I'm in Asbury Park, New Jersey. For those who know, it is a very queer, beach, walkable little city. I have
Is it
easy
Jersey
access.
Shore? Is that Jersey
Yeah,
Shore?
this
Nice.
falls under the Jersey Shore realm for sure.
Nice.
It's definitely the gayest branch of the Jersey Shore. So we just celebrated Pride here this past weekend. I have, quick access to New York City if I want to go there, quick access to Philly. But life has been good, I am kind of just like working around here. I've been writing. I wrote an essay for Cosmo, have another one coming out soon.
Wow.
That's rad.
Been trying to just do more of that. So life's been good post show, very relaxing, and wonderful.
Wow. Okay. I am so excited to hear that you said it's very relaxing. Because
Yeah.
what I was going to ask you is, it seems like, in case you've been living under a rock listening to this podcast, since, was it maybe like less than a month ago ish? Teeny came out as a trans man in a variety of amazing media things, including the Cosmo article and amazing photo shoot where you look so cool in Asbury. It's in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, that seemed like that could be a lot. But it seems like you're doing good in the aftermath of that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like, that's a good point. Like, you would assume that like coming out in that way would be incredibly overwhelming and, a lot. But I actually think like the experience of being on the show and having my publicity and my portrayal being like very outside of my hands and was a lot more overwhelming. Whereas this felt like an announcement that I was in complete control of. And also like something I talked about within it is just that it was getting to be overwhelming to try and exist in a middle space that I didn't fully feel comfortable in. So coming out in this way has been like just kind of like homeostasis has been reached, and it's wonderful.
Putting the homo in homeostasis.
Good one.
That's so amazing to hear, and makes a lot of sense. Also, should we roll it back? Like, I think we
All the way.
all the way. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess like where we typically start is like people's coming out, which obviously we joke on this podcast all the time about like coming out multiple times, but specifically like in terms of, I think the most interesting piece is like, going on Survivor, which you do touch upon this in your essay a little bit about like that experience, but like in terms of before going on Survivor, like what was life like for Teeny?
I'd love to talk about that because I really do feel like I've sort of beaten a dead horse a lot with the like going on Survivor and coming out stories. So we could take this back. Like, I mean, when I was a child, I dressed in all boy clothes. I really I walked around asking people to call me Zach. Like and not every trans man's experience is this way, but like for me, I think it was very clockable from an early age, and like. Even like with my relationship to reality TV, like I really looked up to men on the show. I like really walked around my elementary school talking like Eric Stein from Big Brother. And so I think all the signs were there. Also, like in terms of my sexuality, I always just loved women. I had crushes on girls all growing up. So, but I was very afraid to be othered in school. I didn't want to be seen as a lesbian. And so I kind of hid that part of myself throughout high school and just got very involved in things to try and distract from it. And then my process of coming out as gay was all throughout college. And that was just, I don't know how to even explain it. It felt like a tour of just like getting drunk and telling one person here and there. And then as more people knew, I felt more comfortable in the identity. and I started, embracing dressing the way I wanted to, because I don't know if you could relate to this, Evvie, but like for many years when I wasn't presenting as masculine, I just stopped caring altogether about how I sort of looked, and I didn't even perceive myself and my body at all. And so the process of me coming out and becoming comfortable being gay was helpful in me, like, to change my appearance. And then there was a lot of things that happened, I think, that like started to make me think about my gender more. And I think one of those, again, it all comes back to reality TV in a big way. Watching RuPaul's Drag Race, which I discovered in COVID, exposed me to a lot of like fluidity of like the queens who go on that show and kind of talk about their journey with it. And I'm watching, people come out as trans on that show. I'm also feeling like, why do I have a crush on Gigi Good? I thought, I felt a lot of just like fluidity within my own self and my attraction. And also, I think TikTok was blowing up at this point. I'm seeing a lot of people get top surgery, and just getting top surgery and being non-binary, getting top surgery and still identifying as a girl. And it really loosened the reins on how I thought about all that stuff. And all these things kind of coming together made me feel like something was going on. But because Survivor was such a big part of my goals, I think it was worrisome to me to start any sort of process before wanting to get on, because I was like, I feel like my chances might be better of getting on if I like fit into this mold, which is kind of just like a lesbian, whatever. So that's kind of like not the long,
Wow.
it's not short, but yeah, that's kind of the story.
But there's so many things that you said that are like, oh, that, yeah, for me, like me, it was like, as soon as I went to university, it was like, yep, okay, I'm going to be out as queer. Like but high school was too scary for me to do that, because like there's such long connections to people. I also like, you're near your hometown typically. So like being at is not, so going and like, I moved away and then doing that. RuPaul's Drag Race is so important to my like trans experience of like just seeing other people be more themselves, finding like queerness being a gateway to like transness also, like, so there's like a million things, and now I want to just like, hone in. So, but
and okay, I'll just say my resonance is as well, like there's and I'm so interested to talk to you, because I feel like our journeys are like similar and different, which I think is really special and cool. And like, yeah, so for me, I also have Drag Race, definitely a thing for me. But what's interesting to me is what happens for me. I feel like there was a time period when, before I was really thinking about myself, as like trans mask, because I feel like I definitely, and it sounds like you a bit had this period, but for me, I really was like, I'm non-binary, but but really what I meant was, I know I'm not a woman, and I didn't really know what else, but I knew that was the case. And for me, that was like a realization that like happened on Survivor, or like a crystallization that happened on Survivor, which I'm sure we'll talk about your on island piece of that.
Can I ask that, is for both of you, is that like, there's we've talked about over the years of the show of labels being so like very nervous about labeling yourself, then they become super important, and then they become less important, because you're like, oh, I'm actually not, like that. I feel like that's the journey of like rejecting labels, then like embracing them, then being like, actually I don't need the labels, because actually the labels aren't perfect. But was it such a specific, like something like Survivor is so trying to put you in a box that is then what the thing of, you're like, oh, like no, thank you, to like, or is that it?
I personally felt that way a bit, especially with regards to like womanness, where like I just really found myself, because I think the thing is like, yeah, when you're talking about labels, it's like Survivor, you're literally trying to communicate who you are to like the world that doesn't know you, and to the producers and to the casting people. And so you inherently do have to have some amount of like, what is my label? What is my box? Okay, I'm Teeny, I'm the lesbian, like whether or not that feels true. And yeah, for me, certainly the like, I remember really distinctly in like the you film the opening confessionals, like the ones that are like that are in the first couple minutes of the episode. You film that before the game starts, and I remember doing that day on like the media day, which they're I think doing like right now,
probably for 50, yeah.
And being like, there's not been someone like me on Survivor before, but I couldn't like articulate what that was. I was like, there's not been like a girl in a bow tie. That's what I said. And I was like, like what's happening there? Like I really couldn't like
I
You know what I
relate
mean?
so hard. Media Day will forever go down as one of the most like stressful days of my life because of that. I
Mm.
was like, I've waited so long for this, and there's so much I do have to say. But even then, I felt like I was getting questions, and yeah, it's like when you don't have this specific label, it's really, really, really hard to give like a talk track or a sound bite of like
Right.
what you are. And to answer the question more broadly, I think being on the show for me really pushed me to evaluate like I think in my life before the show, I had people who I was comfortable who understood that I did not see myself as a girl, and I
Mhm.
felt safe with those people, and I felt seen by those people, but I still felt like okay to exist as a girl to others because I had that as kind of a retreat. Whereas being on the show and realizing I would be discussed so at large was like, yeah, I don't know if like that's enough anymore. I think I need everyone to kind of get on this page or to begin to understand what this is. Um,
Yes, yes. I
yeah.
resonate with that so deeply because it's like, yeah, in my world in Boston, it's like everybody, yeah, like I'm a girl, but not like that, like whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and everybody kind of gets it. And it's like when people mess up my pronouns, but like I know they like really know who I am. That matters a lot less than like
Mhm.
someone that I know doesn't see me at all and is like seeing me in this totally wrong way, you know? And so, like you're saying, yeah, and then you're trying to, you know, that you're going to be discussed by like random people and you hear yourself being discussed and you see it written down and you're like, oh, wait, that's not right. And
Yeah.
that's very disorienting.
Mhm. Exactly.
Yeah. And so, and you were kind of like consciously thinking of of yourself as like, not necessarily as like gender queer or something like this going into the show, would you say? Yeah.
Yeah, I was in a relationship in the months that I was like going through casting, which was like very important and huge in just my personal life and like my journey. Where this woman like really really helped me understand that I was not a cisgender person, and that was kind of a big reason why a lot of my relationships prior to that were failing. And this is something the essay that I wrote in Cosmo kind of talks about this, the one that's coming out soon. But like, yeah, I was in a relationship where I was really being validated and seen
Mm.
as like a trans man and having so many long conversations about that and having like being referred to in that way. And like in my personal life, that was such a retreat, but also like I did have friends who were still calling me she, her. So it was confusing. I don't know. I went on the show and I was like, I knew that I couldn't expect that level of validation from these people who weren't queer women dating a trans man. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you can't expect that. And that was okay. But then of course the whole piece of like coming home and seeing that a lot of queer people on the internet clocked me before I said anything. It was like, wow, like there's a lot more people than just her who can see me in this
Yep.
way.
Yep.
So like this is something I can ask for. This is something that people do already see within me. And that was really healing. And like all of that helped the pieces and the steps come together to be where I am now.
Mm. Mm. Ugh, there's so much in like every single thing you're saying. If we could go back to what you said about like your relationships with women were challenging when they weren't seeing you or like when they didn't know that you were trans. Like, could you speak a little more about that? Like, what was it that kind of caused
Sure.
those relationships to end?
I think I was, in college, I was out as gay and I was very clearly gay. And I went to a big state school. I went to Rutgers, go Rutgers. Um, and I was a part of a lot of like the Greek scene. A lot of these girls are straight. A lot of these people are straight. But they knew me to be sort of like the token gay person. And so if
Mhm.
there was a girl who was like bisexual or questioning or whatever, it's kind of like somebody who, you know, dated some of these girls, and for them I felt like I was like, this is a trope that goes beyond transness. Like a lot of like lesbians feel like they're experimented with in college.
Yep.
People who are experimenting, there's a whole narrative of that happening. But for me it was like, okay, you're experimenting with me because I am a woman to you. This is new and you don't know if you actually like men. But I like can only I feel invalidated because like I don't actually feel like a girl at all. And so like it just
And they're maybe saying things like, "It's so crazy to be with a woman."
yes,
Or like,
exactly.
yeah.
Like it's so much
Mhm.
better. And like part of me though would be like, yeah, absolutely it is. Like fuck men, which we know is my whole thing. But um but I think that was also like internalized transphobia. So there was a lot going on, and like intimacy was difficult because I felt like there was a mismatch in like how I perceived myself versus how they perceived me. And like it was incredibly complicated, and it always ended up becoming so emotionally overwhelming that I would just kind of like shut down and back out before I had to like get into it. And it also felt frustrating that to be able to really connect with these people, I would have to carry this big responsibility of explaining what dysphoria is and like what I'm thinking to, people who weren't really exposed to that or didn't know what it was. And so when I finally started dating someone who kind of came to me first and was like, I see these things in you, like that was such a relief to my soul.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to explain. It's a very vulnerable, and not everybody gets it. And it's really just, it's nice to have somebody who really, really gets it. And that was for a long time, it just wasn't that way. And I don't blame any of those people, but it was just tough.
Yeah.
That is what is so. That is, I'm like mind blown of like how, like I find that like that I've never thought about that of like these like people who are trying to explore their sexuality, and then finding themselves in a situation with you where then that experience is actually invalidating to your idea. That is I've never thought of that experience. It's like I really appreciate you like sharing this. I think it's really important. Yeah.
Well,
Definitely.
I appreciate that response because I wrote an essay about it, and I hope many people feel that way. They're reading
yeah,
it, so
yeah.
thank you.
I know
Yeah.
people will. I know people
Yes.
will. And just to say in general, it's just been like I know that as you said, like it's so empowering to be able to tell your own story, and just like it obviously is like you're putting in a lot of labor on that, and I just really know that it matters to so many people reading these things and seeing these things, and it matters to me. And like thank you so much. It's like it's a total gift to the world.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And on this topic of trans dating, I feel like I've experienced both. I feel like I've experienced both some elements of the thing that you were saying of like the like, oh my God, a woman. Like I definitely like there's notes of that in my back of my mind, but I wasn't as like conscious of what was happening with my gender, maybe when those things were happening. But then I've also more recently had the experience where where like someone who is also in that sort of like self-discovery moment about her sexuality, I feel like because that person then is coming from straight dating culture, then was like, okay, you're a man and I'm going to treat you like you're a straight man and I'm a straight woman, and we're going to do like straight toxic stuff. You know what I mean? And it's like that also is really wrong. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's something like validating about it in a way of like, yes, you see my masculinity, but then there's also something really invalidating of like, but to me, at least I'm like, but I'm still like queer. Like I'm still like, I'm not a man like that. Like I'm, you know what I mean? I'm like a trans mask, queer, to me, lesbian, dyke, something like all those words still float around that feel way more right than like, just, okay, put on me like all the things of masculinity as you've been used to experiencing them. But then also like, that's also complicated because also the more masculine I'm perceived by the world, the more I do get some elements of like masculine privilege. Like it's just so complicated, you know?
It really is. It's also like, I feel like I'm experiencing like being like newly kind of out as trans. It is easy to fall into the binary that like we want to work so hard to push against. It's like, I don't know, like because I have this newfound freedom and like my identity, I sometimes feel that I am susceptible to like pushing a binary on like a queer partner. And it's like, well, yeah, it's all, but the thing that's good about queer people is that we love to communicate. And so I think it's like beautiful to be able to like work through these things together and like talk about it and evolve and all that stuff.
Absolutely. I resonate with that. Go ahead.
The thing about like binaries and and like being which is like when you're, especially when you're trying to figure out your identity, is this the idea that, and I remember talking with my therapist once about this, and it was like we were talking about all these things that sometimes externally people validate you with your identity, and you're trying to figure out if then that is actually validating for yourself, or it was validating because society is validating you, like some random your random coworker is being like, you know, that thing about you is when you're like, actually, I don't even know if I like this thing about me, but maybe I don't like it because it's like making me stand. Like, it's so complicated to figure out when you're exploring, when you're finally trying to figure out your identity, when you're actively trying to explore it and like figure it out and figure out what is actually your identity, because of the way in which like it's your own personal. But like you said earlier, like internal is, and then when you have a moment of like, oh, I don't like this, you're like, well, maybe that's internalized transphobia. Like, there's so many, it's so complicated to figure out. I don't know if like sometimes people will understand the amount of like mental like just work it takes to like exist sometimes and figuring out like, am I happy right now? Like, am I happy with how this is right now? And like, it's very complicated, I think.
Well, same with, and just to shout out, I read a lot of like queer and trans memoir and books. There is a book called like On Trans and Feeling Bad. And there's just like just a brief tag for the book. It's like people always say that like once you medically transition, or once you get top surgery, or once you like go on hormones, or once you come out, like it's suddenly going to be like happy and you've reached this point of euphoria. It's actually like no, you still feel bad, and there's still so many things to work out. So that's a great book to read if you're figuring things out.
No, 1000%. And I'm like, great. My chest, sick. Like, that's great. We figured that out. Now I have all this time to ruminate about other things I don't like. Yeah. Like, and that is just how it goes. I remember actually before I got top surgery thinking like, okay, but if if I get top surgery, then I'll worry more about my thighs. And then it's like, okay, well, so what? You're not going to get top surgery because then you'll worry about your thighs. Like, okay, next you worry about your thighs. That's just like that. That's bodies.
My thing that I've been trying to figure, and I was thinking about this because is my thing right now is that like I feel like my trans identity is more of like it's not a complete feminine identity. Like I don't want to look like super femme, but I can't be like, I'll see sometimes like early like people who have to, I'll see their like early like before pictures before they and I'm like, that's what I want to look like before they transition is what I want to I want to look like, but I can't look like that because I'm like I'm because like if I just wore the same outfit, people would just clock me as being male. It's like very so complicated.
Right.
It really is, and I relate to that a lot.
Right, which is where it's like obviously there are women wearing clothes like that, like all types of women wearing clothes like that, and people can recognize that. But society, society,
I really do think that's the problem,
Yeah,
but,
I mean, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Evvie.
Okay, well, I was gonna say, okay, so we went all over and around some of the pre-Survivor, and I know you have we got all the way to media day, I guess. And so like, and I know that you have talked about this in other platforms, but I think, you did, it was so, okay, for me also, as someone that was wrestling with my gender identity privately during the game of Survivor, I want to again say how meaningful it was to hear you talking about it publicly in your confessionals, like literally like while you're doing it. Like that is so cool. Were you like, how did that feel while that was happening? And you're like doing like, and like, I know there was like the one confessional when your like bag was burned. Like, I feel like, and was that like, was that the one time you really talked about that? How did that feel? Like, kind of, did you make a choice at some point to be like, I'm going to talk about this? Yeah.
I think like, so I think that was the one time I talked about it in confessional, but I was very open amongst my cast about talking about it, but it was never in such a super profound way. It was always very like them asking me about my pronouns and me kind of brushing it off and saying I go by whatever, and me explaining top surgery in such a way that it wasn't really, I knew wouldn't be kind of clipped and put in the show.
Because you already knew you were going to get it after.
Yes, I had like an appointment and everything, which I'm really grateful for because it made it was able to be something I kind of could just wrap up and tell people to express a lot of what I wasn't able to find words for. Like there is just a transness in that. I think a lot of people only know about top surgery through the lens of like someone actively transitioning. But then, everything else I was saying was kind of confusing. So it all kind of worked together. And I think but that confessional, I was really upset in the game at that point. I had just lost Saul, and it really was a moment where I felt all of the weight of like what at that point, also there weren't really many queer people left. Andy was there. Andy's bisexual, but like it was just this feeling of like, oh my God, I need a gay person so bad, and like
Mhm.
I don't feel good in the game, and I feel betrayed. And honestly, like if there's ever gonna be a time to be open about this, like now's the time. And I'm really glad they put it in the show because, like, from what I remember of giving that interview, like, it was really fragmented, and I like just like in media day struggled to get a really articulate point across, even like how I feel like I'm doing now, because I was so confused and I was so concerned about. I wanted to be a representative for queer people, but I didn't want to do it wrong. I didn't want
Mhm.
to be like halfway or half measured about it. And so I remember just walking away from it and being like, I don't think I even explained that too well. But then watching it back, I'm like, wow, that really was like exactly what I was thinking and feeling, and exactly like forever for the rest of my life. When I watch that back, I'll be like, that sums it up. Like I didn't know where I fit in, and it was very, very, very confusing, and it really did come into play in the game at many points. Even though overall I do think being like trans in Survivor was actually probably more helpful to me than anything. Um,
Mm.
but
How come?
yeah,
Yeah.
I
But
think just like being trans and having funky gender stuff going on growing up really does just it changes how you interact with the world and the people around you. And I knew like I just always knew like I could get along with straight men incredibly
Mhm.
well because some part of me identifies with that identity. I could get along with gay guys super well. I have a lot of gay male friends. Like I just feel a part and sense of myself in everybody. And I also think that like being and appearing different can be a superpower. And like, I don't know, I think all those things together helped me and made me relatable without. And I also think that like the stage I was at, it was beneficial. Who knows, honestly, like who knows how people really would interact with somebody coming on. We still have yet. Yes, I was the first openly non-binary person to play the game, but did I say that to my cast members? No. So
Right.
who knows how that actually would play out? Someone asking to be called specifically they them pronouns without like being on hormones or something. Oh damn, I'm like forgetting the point I was making.
Oh, I think you were saying like the stage that you were at. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like the state I was at, like I wasn't asking, I didn't feel I was asking too much of people where they felt like they were gonna fuck up. And so all those things working in conjunction together, I think helped me become like a person embedded into a lot of these people's games and like their relationships and the season at large.
Mm.
I want to talk about that PC because I in your essay you do talk about that, about like if you this idea that if you make things too complicated, it was not about how you feel, it was about how other people would feel, and then how that feeling might cause them to vote you out. But I first want to go back to the thing that I think is like really interesting and like really powerful, which is the way you talk about like we have talked on this podcast. I feel like I say it every single time. Queer people are good at Survivor because what did I say last week? It's because we were hyper
Hyper
attuned to our
social aware.
social awareness, something like that. Like we're
Yes,
like
yes.
walk into a room and like, is it safe? Can I be out? Whatever. And I feel like that is a highly transferable skill to
Oh yeah.
Survivor. But I really like the way in which you were talking about like how queer people who have all these different experiences up through their life and different experiences with gender or sexuality are like highly relatable people, because there's a way in which like we are so often othered of people. And I love the kind of like the reframing of that to be like, no, I actually can relate to, like I have times where I was like being a total bro with my high school bros because
Mhm.
that's who I was trying to be and just trying to be comfortable at the time. So like I've broed out, hundreds of times probably, and
Mhm.
that's not exactly the slot I want to fit. But if like you end up like, I still have a lot of, because of my circle of friends, I still have a lot of those friends. And sometimes, we're like making stupid bro jokes. So I like the way of like framing it as like, actually like there's like a hyper relatable, way about queer and trans people. But yeah, I mean that piece of um not wanting to make other people uncomfortable, and then being in the situation that is obviously an outlier in the sense of like, yeah, if they're so uncomfortable with me, they'll vote me out, I won't be able to win $1 million, is obviously
Yeah.
an extreme situation. But
I mean, I relate to that so much, like that. I mean, I can't believe I'm bringing this up because I never want to bring up "Come on in, guys." I would love to never talk about that ever again in my life. But that is why I was like, "Come on in, guys" is fine with me, because like I felt so much like I don't want to be the like queer person that people are afraid that they're gonna get canceled because they like do the wrong thing. You know what I mean? And so I
When
was
you
like,
said
I'm
that,
just
I
gonna
was
make
like,
everyone comfortable. And it's like, and the truth, and also like I'm a guy, so like obviously it doesn't bother me. Like, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
something that I had to like realize about after. But like I really was like, people are gonna think like I only was seeing it through the lens of like, oh my God, people are gonna think that like I'm a scary, like what, like, you know, the scary, bad, woke queer person that's gonna like cancel you for like saying the wrong thing. And I just want people to be like, Evvie's chill, you know? And then you're like doing that in the context.
Wow, what a cool non-binary person Evvie is.
Yeah, yeah. What a cool little funky little lesbian over there. We don't know what they're up to, but and it also like did work, honestly. Like I think like is the truth. Is like I do think that ended up being like a thing where people were like, oh, okay, you're like that.
They're cool because they did it. They weren't the one who said, yeah.
Right. And that's shitty. That's so shitty too. You know, like of course to be like, okay, I'll do the thing that's like the easy thing to put the other people at ease, and like at the expense of what, at the cost of what, you know? And like I think like when I think about I feel the same way of like if I go on the show, if I were to ever go back on the show and like it would bother, like I need people to use they them pronouns. Like we're not settling for not, but like what am I going to do? Like I do feel like that would make me someone that maybe people don't want to be like worried, you know, like it is stressful.
I think, I think because post show, every one of my cast has been nearly flawless in the execution of like adjusting pronouns and being super open-minded. And so for our cases specifically, I think having it kind of out there would be very helpful from like a cast and production. Like we're in the community, people know at this point, but like I think it's like if you're going into play for the first time, I'm very curious. I don't think anyone is ill-intentioned. I just think it's hard. It's new language. It's instinctual at times, and it's like it's a complicated situation, and it's one that obviously in a high pressure game where you're being televised, it feels like the stakes are really high. And for us who were very, confused at that point and not super dead set on it and weren't super like
Right.
in close to transition, it was so much easier to one, get ourselves there, and to just exist there and kind of just be like, all right, call me she. But
Right.
what I also hope you experienced and I did too is that like so many queer people watching were like, what the hell? How could these people even have she come out of
I know.
and like reference to you? Like it is hilarious to think about. It really is. But yeah.
What I think is, I think obviously, like I feel like you could, on one hand you're acknowledging, I think that like, yeah, with it's the way that it happened at the time and that's what it is. And I also think though, and it feels like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, a little bit of like, oh, what if I had have done it this other, like what if I had have been much more. And I think that, yes, I say sometimes like, oh yeah, you're in this hyper pressure situation of a game where you might win $1 million, but there are people in real life who make these same decisions all the time. Like this is, yes, it's like we're like focused on it, but there's also people who at work who like have the coworker who keeps misgendering them, and they, for their own safety and not wanting to be that person who's creating conflict at work, like chooses always to let it happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think every single time someone misgenders me, which like happens all the time, it's and like as a people pleaser, now you're stuck between, okay, do I feel like shit or do they feel like shit? Or do I feel still like shit because I had to say something uncomfortable to my boss, to my coworker? You know what I mean? Like that is a constant.
It's so much.
Yeah. It's so much.
And it's also just like we aren't the woke police. Like I don't want to be the woke police. I don't really care that much. It's okay, but then people feel so bad about it. I mean, this is a whole thesis, but yeah, I don't know. That's
the point, I think. But I mean,
yeah. And I'll just say, if you have a friend in your life who's using pronouns that people are getting wrong, I feel like the coolest thing ever is if you, 100%. As the friend, do a little correction, pull someone aside. I love when people do that for me. So I don't know if that feels nice for you, Teeny.
Yes.
Yeah, you like that, Grace. Yeah, be an ally, this pride, people. Sorry, what were you about to say, Grace?
I don't even remember really, so it's okay. I like leaving it on your point instead. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so and I do want to going back to some pieces in the game. I really want to. I remember, and you've talked in some of your essays more about some of this like gender envy stuff with Sam and like and those things. And I honestly don't know that I even heard the word. I think maybe you're the one that taught me the phrase gender envy through those things, and I really resonate with it and like see that has been a thing in my life too. And I just want to call out like specifically the thing I remember listening to, maybe it was like the know-it-alls after the finale or something, and they were talking about how you said the thing of like Sam was the guy that, you know, the teacher would ask to move the chairs, and I remember Rob being like,
yeah,
that's so random.
That's bogus. That's a bogus thing that they don't know that thing, I think.
Well, yeah, well, and I think it just never would occur to him that that's like cool. You know what I mean? That's something that you might like want to do. And I just want like the other day, a special person to me was moving and needed help, and like all the trans boys were like, I want to help you move.
Yeah.
And like, of course, because like that is a thing that even though that's an objectively bad task, like that's the kind of thing that like we've dreamed our whole lives of, people being like, well, obviously you'll be the one to help me move the thing, which again,
we should start
is
an event. We just I know that there's like queer proms and stuff where people get to go back and like redo their prom as if they're queer. We need to do an event that's like just the weirdest little gender stuff from when you were like, you know, in high school that you get to do now in the in the gender that you actually, you know, would be affirmed by. Of like, you get to move the desks. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You get to stack the chairs up and put them on the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I don't know. That was a bunch of sentences about that. But I don't know. Is there anything maybe more about the gender envy with Sam, or like things that you've been thinking about since the show on this topic? Or I just really will say thank you for articulating that, because I just do think that is like something that I really hadn't thought about so consciously.
I think when it comes to this gender envy stuff and with Sam, it was so real at the time, but the time was literally the freak out, the tantrum where it all kind of came out was really an hour and a half of my life.
Right.
And like really truly as time goes on, I realized how much of that was just such a like reactionary feeling to the elements and being hungry. And like I do know that like the reason why it was Sam who I had the gender envy about versus, you know, like Andy or Saul or anyone is because me and Sam are very similar people and had very similar, like we did similar things growing up. And I was like insecure about my place in the game.
Yep.
And I had this complicated working relationship with Genevieve, and I, you know, was seeing like his grow stronger with her throughout so there was all these different working factors. But like, if anything, it makes me upset that so much of what will be remembered of me for so many people who watch the show is this rant, because I don't even believe it. Like, I don't even really feel that way. I don't feel that way with him now. Like, and gender envy is real, but like at this point in my life, it manifests in like, my clothes aren't going to fit me like they do a 6 foot person, which to be fair, Sam is 6 foot. So like, but no, it's, I don't know. I think it's what I said, I guess I'm ultimately thankful for, because it gave me the vessel to own it and speak to it at the end, which was helpful. And I've received a lot of wonderful feedback from that. And it is very true. And it is very true to me. But it frustrates me that like an impulsive reaction that I had to something got me to that place when like so much of the experience really wasn't about that at all, you know?
You know, and that's one of those things. I do not think that is going to be the legacy of Teeny on Survivor. You know what I mean? Like, yes, maybe in the was that the finale episode or like the one before that or something like that? It was like towards the
last 2 episodes were all very that.
Yeah, and that's of course going to be the thing that's freshest on the mind and like whatever. But like, I promise you, that is not the thing that people are like gonna ultimately be like, Teeny, oh yeah, the one that hated Sam. Like, definitely not. Like, your legacy is far beyond that, and your story, even your season, was far beyond that. So, you know, anyone that thinks that doesn't matter, you know. But yeah, and I hear that, and like that is also the other thing with like Survivor in general. Like, it always frustrates me when Jeff will say something like, we can have these real conversations here or whatever. And it's like, we're not having real conversations. We're in a game. We are having conversations like in the context of a game, in the context of starving, in the context of our brains not working to their peak capacity because we're hungry and tired and haven't slept. And so there's no, if you're trying to pin someone down to one moment of them on Survivor, that's not your truest I think there's a fallacy that's your truest self. It might be yourself stripped down in a very bad moment, and I don't think that's most people's truest self.
Yes, and I actually remember there's other points on this I want to make that I haven't made yet. Another thing, I feel as though I also can relate to you on not wanting to be considered the woke person, not wanting to be kind of cringe to middle America, because I already knew I was going in, and if I did anything wrong, if I slipped up in any way like that, they were going to hate me. They were looking for a reason. And so I was angry that I let it slip in that moment, because that gave them all the reason that they needed. And I was also very angry because in what I said about him in the heat of the moment was he was just prom king, blah, 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 blah. And it really gave the indication that I was some weirdo in my life growing up. And I'm that's actually not the case at all. Somehow amidst this, I have really diminished what I feel proud of, which is that I have been an incredibly social person despite the adversity of how I've looked and my queerness. And because I had this freak out and my language wasn't catching up to my brain, I've now all by myself projected this idea that I'm mad because I had such a loserish high school experience. And I'm no, that's not the case. I'm y'all can be mad at me for saying I hate my this and that, but you can't think that. So that is one thing I wanted to speak to as well.
Right. Well, and just to say again, it's and your story on the show was that everyone loved you the whole time. You know what I mean? That's just the story was never there's this loser weirdo. Maybe you regret that specific language, but again, the overall story was nothing like that. And I just really want you to know that.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
1,000,000,000%.
I wanted to as I was thinking about you coming on and then you being here today, and it's going to sound like I'm going to be, but I really don't want it to be in terms of the type of representation we've had on Survivor and what we could have, because I would love for there to be obviously a trans woman on at some point, but the show has I'm really struggling. I want to make sure we've only had sort of trans masculine people on the show, and I think that that's just really interesting. And I think it's really the one thing I really think is great about it is that that is not the predominant trans representation. I do feel most representation when it comes to things are trans feminine. And so what do you think it is about Survivor that has made that sort of that is the reality of trans representation on Survivor?
I'm so you read my mind to ask this question, because this is something I've been thinking about so much. And also I connected with Zeke Smith recently, and we had a conversation about this, and Zeke made it in a really wonderful and funny comparison in that RuPaul's Drag Race is the show where a lot of gay men go on, and that's what they identify at the time, and then they kind of go through the experience. And Survivor is, oddly enough, the trans man version of that. And I think a point that we talked about was Drag Race is so high femininity. It's exactly that's what it is, hyper femininity, and getting dressed up and what society views as being a woman. And Survivor is rolling around in the mud and like being kind of jungle. I also think like I don't know, when I watch old Survivor, so much of like Ozzy in like his camo shirt and like what he did, like there's just something so transgender about that. There's something so transgender about like running around in jungle in your underwear and rolling around in the mud and tussling and like being a little scrappy. And I think like these themes of like masculinity in our society do play into that. And I also think that it does have to do with the representation that we've gotten. Like, you know, like there have been masculine presenting lesbians and trans Zeke. Like I've been able to see this model of like, oh, this is a type of person that they cast. When I saw Evvie, I was like, that is very much how I look, how I present myself to the world. Like there is an efficacy model of like, oh, I know I could like go ahead and do this. I also think, I don't know, I think being someone who is socialized as a woman, as a girl, you have a lot of emotional intelligence. And then when you kind of come into your own and you gain this newfound confidence, those are like emotional skill sets and strengths and belief within yourself and overcoming things that just give you the oomph to be like, I can do this. This is nothing. So that is kind of my thoughts on that.
I'm still reflecting on the parallels of like of Drag Race and Survivor. Of like, Drag Race is the show you might come off and it turns out you're a trans woman, and Survivor's the show you might come off and it turns out you're a trans man, and or trans masc or trans femme in any way of those. Yeah, I think that all makes a lot of sense to me. And like, I think, and I'll say like, I think a complicated thing for me is coming up also where I'm like, and like women, like femmes can play in the dirt and like run around too. And like, I never want to also like invalid, like that's just the thing that I constantly struggle with in myself, where I'm like, I feel this like, I feel such a draw towards masculinity. And then that does feel like I'm like binarizing something in my brain. You know what I mean? Like it's just to
it. So thank you for saying that.
No. But it's not like a contradiction of what you were saying. It's just like an impulse I had that like to call that out.
We're all gonna be like wanting to make sure the things we're saying are not like, because like my thing is like I don't as much as I would want like a trans woman to be on the show, I also really think it's really good that like that it like, because there is the trans masculine folks have had far less representation in media and on television than trans feminine people. So I think it is also important to acknowledge that like this is not a bad thing that more trans masculine people have been on the show. The one thing I was going to say is that I do think with like trans feminine people, there would be probably a level of like transition that someone would probably have in terms of like laser hair removal and things like that people like we might want to. But yeah, it is interesting to think otherwise why they have not passed really.
Or that could be like people. Extremely dysphoric, like to not have access to but then and I think plug for the first season of The Pride Has Spoken, where I think like the first guest was Bryce, who was like, we need trans women on Survivor. I want a beautiful black trans woman to be on the like on the strong like why aren't they on the Brawn tribe for like how strong and powerful they are? And then like the next episode, Zeke was like, there should be no more trans people on Survivor because it's horrible and scary. Like, and so like it's just one of those complicated things where it's like, yeah, it's amazing to be like representation, and that comes with everything that comes with of being a visible trans or queer or black or whatever identity you are representing. There, you're putting yourself out there to this audience that may or may not be ready for you. And like I do think it would be like I thought about like how cool it would be to go back on Survivor with my new chest, and like how so cool that would be, and of course how absolutely terrifying that would be as well. And like in terms of the America. And yeah, Teeny, how has the reception been in general? Like you've been so public recently. Are you receiving mostly love? Are there any stupid people that we need to?
It's been really mostly love. I think so good. Actually, like I think it's mostly love on like my feeds and everything, because these people are, choosing to follow me anyways. And I think resonate to some degree and support me. But the one place where I received the most hate throughout the season was, of course, the mecca of Survivor Reddit. And when I came out, I was very pleasantly surprised to see quite a lot of love from them as well. Awesome. And I think like my transition, my coming out contextualized for them a lot of like my decisions in the game. And it was honestly healing for me to read some of them apologize or own at least like how they jumped to conclusions. I also think there's been a lot of like, yeah, we knew. We're glad that you now know as well. But everything has been, lovely. Obviously, transphobic people exist in way too much in this country, but in my communities and the things that I'm seeing, it's been lovely.
That is a very nice sentiment for when somebody who does like when that you're being like, oh, it's like that's nice that you knew. So sometimes people are wrong. Like I'm guilty of this as much. I'd be like, I wonder if that person is actually like trans, and then they're not. What if they're not? So The one thing I think that it's not just that I think I love like you sharing these stories, but you're just extremely articulate and you're a very good writer. And so like your pieces are like, especially the cosmetology piece. I'm very excited to see the next one because like the first one is just so well written. Yeah, so that's exciting. That's so exciting.
Yeah, and I'm so happy for you to be receiving that love, and I just also like I do love the like Survivor Reddit nuance. That's like I think it is like funny, like yeah, like I had a lot. So in my cast bio, like which everyone should know, like the words in your cast bio, that's part of your application. So you're like obviously doing the most exaggerated version to get on the show. And I said in my pet peeves that my pet peeve was men, which I stand by. That's hilarious. And but I obviously got so much hate from a lot of people on that. But then as the show went on, I started getting like all these DMs like, you know, I used to think you sucked and you were a stupid bitch for hating men, but now you're kind of good at Survivor. And like, I love that. It's like, you could just skip the first part.
The first part
it
can be edited.
You can just think that up in here. You don't have to send that
You're
to me.
so the same, Evvie. Like, you're accused of like hating men by them. And it's like, it's also so funny because it's like, I still stand by what I said too in my rant in many ways besides the high school stuff. And men are your pet peeve, but like obviously we have great male friends.
Right.
Obviously, like it's just
of
it's
course,
so funny.
Of course. And we're masculine. Like it's like
yes!
it's like
yes. Dude, I remember in one of my like 12 interviews on Exit Press Day, I think it was with the New York Post, and the interviewer like very sincerely, earnestly was like, so like, do you hate all men? And this is like interview 12. This was interview 12. And I was like, no, like I don't hate all men. And then the headline was like, Teeny Chirichillo clears it up. They do not hate all men. I'm like, this is fucking ridiculous.
Oh my God.
It's
that is so crazy. That is so crazy. Wow. I didn't even realize how much that was a trope for about you. That's really
yes. No, I got plenty of misandrous style accusations.
Nice. Well, and the truth is, you don't even freaking know people because he's a man. So shut up. Yeah. Complicated. Okay. Wow. And so you've been doing like, how did all this like cosmopolitan stuff come out? Like, what was the journey towards that? Like,
so with that, I literally I followed the editor-in-chief of Cosmopolitan on Instagram. She is 30 years old. She's incredibly talented, like successful, accomplished writer, and now like editor of Cosmo, which is crazy. And it just so happened like she, had watched the show and we started to communicate and we started talking about like, I was a freelance writer. It was my little fucking it was my like bio.
It very you
it was like my
sooner.
Hyrox or whatever. Hyrox is not what it's called. Hyrox is that like a partner sport. I don't know what that Chiron is. That what it's called?
Oh yeah, Chiron.
Hyrox is the profession that and her girlfriend just did. But yeah, I don't know. I think I presented myself as a writer on the show, so she knew that, and then she was talking about like, hey, we should have you do something, and I was like, well, at this time, I'm really, really, really getting ready to like come out as trans. And I was like, well, this sounds like a great opportunity. Like if I can write an essay for them, they gave me the option of like, we can have a writer like interview you or you can write something. And I was like, I can't like turn down the opportunity to write something for Cosmo. And then after that piece, like we've just kind of been in communication and they're doing like a series of trans writers coming out with essays. It'll come out, I think, not this week, but the next week. And it's like just trans writers writing about like their experiences, love, sex, dating. And so, yeah, my topic is kind of about the process of realizing I was trans throughout dating and throughout like college. But I think there's going to be a lot of other really interesting stories in there. So, yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of ideas of what I want to write in terms of like my transness and my queerness. And I want also like, I know there's a lot of things that I feel very passionate about, but I don't know exactly the best way to like channel them. And I have a Substack. So I'm thinking, and, I have a very good friend who helps me kind of process my ideas. And I'm thinking about like doing like a newsletter, like a weekly newsletter, something of like what I'm wearing, what I'm watching, what I'm reading, what I'm thinking, and posting something like that. So that is kind of what's on my mind. And then ultimately the goal is to write a book, but I don't know if anyone out there knows anything about that process and wants to help me.
Stephen Fishback, where are you?
I
It's
was
Pride
just thinking
Month. Where are you?
Yeah. Well, Stephen Fishback's writing a novel. I want to write like a bunch of essays, but Stephen Fishback hit my line, not to play Clock Tower, but to talk books.
That's hilarious. It's so exciting. It's so cool. I can't wait to see all the stuff that you put out there. And like I can already say it's been super impactful to me, the first essay. So can't wait for the second one. Okay, so we're on the topic, sex and dating, etc. What's going on, Teeny? Are the DMs open? Are they closed? The people need to know.
The DMs are, I mean, the DMs are always open. You can always
Yeah.
DMs are always open. Right now I'm like, I don't want to say I'm super single, but like somewhere in between. You know, that's a very queer thing. Anyone listening to
Sure,
this
yeah.
probably understand.
Every person's like, yeah.
Yeah.
What? And they're gonna go on Reddit. The streamer are gonna go to Reddit, and
Yeah.
people are gonna be like, we get it.
You guys know what's up. But yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know how to answer that one.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Okay, while you're blushing from that, I'll just say one thing related to dating and stuff like that, where I feel like, and maybe this is the kind of thing that you'll be talking about in your piece, where like I feel like the first time I kissed a girl, which was like the most exciting moment of my life, like still, it's probably still number one. I mean, life changing,
For
life
sure.
changing. And I just felt so clearly like the thing that like, I mean, a lot of things like, oh, that's what desire is. That's cool. Didn't realize I didn't know what that was. But like, yeah, like, oh, that, yeah, you don't have to like think about it. It just is happening and you just feel that. Oh, that's cool. But then like, also like, I really had this feeling of like, I am playing a different role in this kiss than I normally play. And that feeling like, whoa, a huge shift that I didn't realize how much was gender and how much sexuality, because I mean, they were both exploding. But it's like, yeah, you learn about yourself through your interactions with other people and like through the way they relate to you and the way, you know, and it's just like, yeah, it's complicated. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely like at this point, like, I mean, it's very clear, like I am out as a trans man, so it's very clear I couldn't date anyone who couldn't see me that way. But like, there was a kind of like, there was a period of time like after the girl who I talked about earlier, who was like very instrumental in like helping me understand, I kind of dated somebody else who wasn't as with it, and that was like a very defining experience, because I was like, okay, I literally physically cannot be with someone who like does not get this, and it is so crucial to being trans or non-binary, anything, to have like a partner who is not only like understanding but is like very down for it and about it. And yeah, so
Yeah.
that is very much what I look for and what I've really appreciated of like partners I've had in the past.
And I'll say, I feel like a simple tip if you're if you're trying to date someone with that identity and are like maybe a little more unsure, like maybe ask them like, how do you like to refer to your body in these ways? What are adjectives that feel good? Like, does pretty feel good? Does handsome feel good? Like these simple things where like actually it might not even occur to you to like, it might not even occur to you as the trans person to like ask for that, but to have someone be like, open it up of like, how do you like, what do you like to call that part of your body? Is like, whoa, there's options, like, you know, like, and that can just be like so affirming.
That's such a wonderful tip, because it really is like, it's a lot to get back out there into dating. It's a lot to like, I don't know, like even thinking about like if I were to go on a dating app at this point, it's like, well, I have only really been with queer women, but now I'm a trans man. So what do I classify under? Because I don't want to be like deceiving people in the words of Jeff Horner. Hey, my roommate's home. Hey, what up, Julia?
Hi, Julia.
Julia. It's hard. I feel dating apps are very complicated because there's a thing about being trans that there's a vulnerableness to, and literally like a safety thing to it as well. But there's also just this thing of like, the apps are so binary, so that like, they work the way they work, and it's like that doesn't always work for me.
Right.
Totally.
And it's also
Yeah.
like, you want to be able to have like flirty banter, small talk or whatever, but it's also like, I need to know that you're actually
Yeah.
down for like these important things. And like you said,
Yeah.
like this language, and like that's kind of like a mood killer if you're throwing that out from the very beginning. So I don't know. It's complicated.
Yeah. Well, it can and it can't. I mean, I think it's like that with like consent also, or like if you're like, is this okay if I do this thing? That can be like awkward. But if you're like, you're so hot, I want to do this to you. Can I do this to you? Like, you know what I mean? That's cool. So like similarly being like, I need you to say this might not be as good as like, don't you think I'm so handsome? Like, you know what I mean? Like, or like whatever. And you start like modeling that stuff. So anyway.
Some people are turned on by the robot voice, Evvie.
Oh yeah, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to kink shame to all the robots out there. Totally. I mean, it was working for me, frankly.
Yeah. We typically have, team. We typically have see, I mixed the two up.
We're all the same.
We're all the same.
Yeah, we're monolithic now.
We typically, two of our last questions. So one is, what are you going to do for Pride? Do you have any Pride plans for the month of June?
Well, so Pride in Asbury, where I live, was just this past weekend
happened
on Sunday. So honestly, while the parade was passing by on the street, I was actually playing Big Mother, which is a virtual version of Big Brother. It was a benefit for Shut Up Queen, who is a drag queen in Chicago. And I felt like that was still doing my part because I actually played with Izzy from Big Brother, with Willow Pill from Drag Race, who is legitimately one of my heroes and my favorite drag queen of all time. So that was incredible. But I did self-evict at the final 8, so I could go celebrate.
Yes.
And so yeah, I celebrated that. I don't know. I think I'll be trying to, I'll just be I'll be revolting by living my trans life. I think I'll probably celebrate New York City Pride. I have obviously a few things. I have the Cosmo article coming out soon. I have like a conversation me and Zeke did coming out soon.
Oh, no way. That's so exciting. That's so
cool.
Good.
And then hopefully I will kick myself into gear and start publishing this newsletter, which will be, very queer as everything I do is.
That's so exciting, Teeny. Such amazing stuff coming up. Obviously, the main thing, doing this podcast also. So,
This is huge.
Dude, it's so...
podcast on the RHAP network.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm sure you tell that to all your podcasts. No, you don't. That's special. That's special, man. Thank you. Grace, what was the other question?
We typically ask people to give like a shout out, like say something to queer LGBTQ fans of Survivor, of you. We just give you sort of the last word to say whatever you would want to say to those people.
Well, first of all, to anyone queer and anyone who watches Survivor, I am you. I will always be you. Like, you, one, are very lucky to have the reality TV sphere and this podcast, this like specific light on the queer people who go on the show. Having reality TV and Survivor is like one of the most important things that literally ever happened to my life. So one, appreciate however it is and whoever showed you it, appreciate that. And two, I think my like practical advice for anyone queer is like, I something that always really, really helped me is, like I said, watching and being exposed to more queer identities is the most helpful thing that ever happened to me, whether that be through reading trans and queer memoirs and essays and their stories and seeing myself in bits and pieces of that, or like watching Drag Race opening my eyes to so many different aspects of my own gender and sexuality, and like seeing people on Survivor. Like, just the more exposure you have to different queerness, the more comfortable and confident and like introspective you can be about yourself. And also, like, if you're queer and you want to go on Survivor, it is possible. And also reach out to me and Evvie too if you relate to anything that we're saying, because there is so much more that is like left to be desired from the queer representation on the show. Like, be it trans women, be it somebody non-binary who really does go in and demand, like, I want to be referred to by the pronouns that make me feel good. Like, there's so much we have yet to see that I'm excited for, and that isn't, not to be like this, but that is in the hands of you. That is in the hands of you guys.
Yeah.
So that is my piece, I'd say.
That was really wonderful, Teeny. And I can't end it without saying, like, I am a huge fan of yours. And like, I am just so, like, literally, like, you being on the show, everything you've done since the show has been so impactful for me and so wonderful to see. And I just feel a lot less alone that you exist. And like, I just, you've taught me so much. And I know that's, I'm one of the millions of fans of yours. So,
well, it's very mutual, Evvie. Like, truly seeing you on the show was like a model for me to believe, one, that I could do it, and was like also one of the first experiences I got to see myself on the show. And so it is very mutual, and I'm so glad that you do this too. This is another thing, like, to be able to spearhead this podcast, which is like the dream of any Queer Survivor fan to get to
really
listen to you. It really is. It's something that I aspired to be on before playing. I was like, oh, if I go on the show, I get to be on this podcast. So this is like making a part of my dream come true as well.
Well, thank you, Teeny. It wouldn't be an episode of The Pride Is Spoken if we didn't end us being like,
yeah,
we love
just a
you,
big
we
love
love
fest.
you, we love you. Yeah. Well, and
I could go on and on with you guys. So
I know.
Truly, if you ever want to have me back, I'd love to talk more.
Yeah.
This is a very gay trans episode.
Thank you so much for listening. My name is Grace Leeder. You can find me on social media at Hi From Grace or at Go From Grace.
And I'm Evvie Jagoda. You can find me on Instagram at Evvie Jag and on TikTok with the account name Evvie from Survivor.
And I'm Matt Scott. You could find me at Matt Scott GW in all platforms. And this is The
Pride
Has Spoken. This is The
Pride
Has Spoken.
That was pretty good.
Yeah.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.